Alright, let's dive into today's story. We're rolling back to the early days of record-breaking aviation, when taking off wasn't just the first step of a journey, it was often the most dangerous part. In 1931, W.L. Oliver published an article in Popular Aviation that explored just how risky those early takeoffs could be. It was appropriately titled, Takeoff Crack-Ups. See, when pilots in the golden age of aviation set their sights on long-distance records, they weren't just hopping in and flying off. These planes were loaded to the absolute brim with fuel and supplies, pushing designs and engines right to their limits. Pilots and designers had to juggle tricky numbers like power loading, that's the plane's weight divided by its horsepower, and wing loading, the weight divided by the wing area. Every gallon of fuel added about 6.5 pounds, and that weight piled up fast. It wasn't just about raw power. A plane might look great on paper, but real-world takeoffs with overloaded aircraft were a different beast. Even the best designed planes could falter under extreme loads, and as the article highlighted, a few famous flights met a fiery end before they even left the ground. One of the first tragedies happened when French ace Rene Fonck attempted to win the $25,000 Orteig Prize for the first non-stop flight from New York to Paris. Fonck teamed up with Igor Sikorsky, who built a huge tri-motor plane for the job. Roosevelt Field, with its long runway, was chosen for the takeoff, but as Fonck rode down the field, his overloaded plane just couldn't lift. At the end of the runway, it slammed into a gully and burst into flames. Fonck and his navigator escaped, but tragically, 2 mechanics on board didn't make it. The following year, another devastating takeoff crash took the lives of Lieutenant Commander Noel Davis and Lieutenant Stanton Wooster. Their plane, the American Legion, was built to cross the Atlantic too. On a critical test flight at Langley Field, the fully loaded plane struggled to gain altitude. Wooster expertly kept it just above the ground, riding the so-called ground air cushion, a subtle lift effect pilots rely on during takeoff. These days we call that ground effect, and if you spent time at an RC flying field, you've likely heard that term tossed around. Ground effect happens when a plane flies closely to the ground, usually within a wingspan's height, and the air beneath it gets compressed, creating a cushion of high-pressure air that helps generate extra lift and reduce drag. Want to see a simple demonstration? Take a sheet of paper, hold it flat, and drop it over a tabletop. As it falls, watch how it hovers briefly when it gets close to the table, almost floating before finally settling. That's ground effect in action. Whether it's a toy plane or a giant airliner, the principle remains the same. Wooster was using every ounce of skill to stay in that cushion, but when he had to bank the plane to avoid obstacles, he lost that critical lift. The massive plane sank and crashed, tragically ending their mission. Another memorable story involved Clarence Chamberlin and Roger Q. Williams, who were chasing an endurance record with a custom Belanca monoplane. They faced challenges from the start: soft, muddy runways, high-tension wires, and tricky winter conditions. Despite their careful prep, their plane just couldn't build enough speed on the boggy runway. Chamberlain signaled Williams to dump the fuel mid-roll to lighten the load, but by the time the plane hit the end of the runway, it clipped the foundation and was wrecked. Miraculously, both pilots walked away unharmed, and Williams even joked about it, draping a tire around his neck and saying, "It's time to retire." These stories remind us that back then, every takeoff was a gamble. Pilots put their lives on the line, testing the limits of design, physics, and sheer determination. Today, we take safe, reliable air travel for granted, but it's worth remembering the daring aviators and engineers who paved the way, one risky takeoff at a time. If you enjoyed this look back at aviation history, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories from the golden age of flight. Until next time, keep your wheels down and your eyes on the skies.